This HOA, Karen destroyed my trash can 57 times with her $60,000 Escalade, so I replaced it with a concrete one and watched her destroy her own SUV instead. What started as morning property demolition ended with criminal charges, a $12,000 settlement, and one very expensive life lesson about picking the wrong neighbor to bully. Picture this. The sharp crack of plastic shattering echoes through dawn silence, followed by the metallic scrape of bumper meeting asphalt as a pearl-white Escalade speeds away, leaving my garbage scattered like confetti across the driveway. Again. But here's the thing about bullies, they never expect their victims to fight back with actual concrete evidence. By the time I was done, this self-appointed compliance officer had demolished her own vehicle, exposed a $47,000 embezzlement scheme, and learned the hard way that some neighbors refuse to be intimidated by clipboards and fake authority. Seriously, what would you do if your neighbor was basically playing demolition derby with your property every single morning? Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I want to see if this kind of HOA madness is happening in your town too. Let me back up and tell you how this whole mess started. My name's Marcus Holloway, I'm 45 and I've been an electrician for 22 years. Recently divorced, fighting for joint custody of my two teenagers, Emma, 16, and Tyler, 14. We live in Pinewood Gardens, one of those cookie-cutter HOA neighborhoods in suburban Ohio where everyone's lawn has to be exactly 2.5 inches tall and mailboxes come in 3 approved colors. I bought the corner lot house 3 years ago right after the divorce papers were signed. Figured it'd be a fresh start, you know? The kids could have their own rooms, decent schools, safe neighborhood. What I didn't figure on was dealing with Brenda Whitmore, a 52-year-old widow who appointed herself the neighborhood's compliance officer, a title that doesn't actually exist in our HOA bylaws, by the way. Brenda drives a pearl-white Escalade that's bigger than some studio apartments. She moved in about 3 years back after her husband died, no kids, retired from managing a bank downtown. The woman knows every HOA rule by heart and treats our monthly dues like her personal slush fund. She's buddies with the HOA president, Gerald Thornfield, which basically makes her untouchable. Now here's where geography becomes important. My corner lot means the trash pickup requires me to place my bin near the street every Tuesday morning. City ordinance says within 3 feet of the curb, which puts it right at the edge of where Brenda takes her daily power walk at exactly 6:15 a.m. The first incident happened on a Tuesday in September, second week of school. I'm getting the kids ready, coffee brewing, that familiar diesel rumble of the garbage truck still 20 minutes away. Then crack the sound of plastic exploding like a gunshot. I rush outside to find my trash can obliterated, garbage scattered across my driveway like someone detonated a confetti bomb filled with banana peels and coffee grounds. There's Brenda, backing up her Escalade, rolling down her window with this fake, concerned expression. "Oh my," she says, not a trace of sincerity in her voice. "These streets are just so narrow. I hope you weren't too attached to that old thing." Old thing? I'd bought it the week before for $23 at Home Depot. But I kept my cool, figured it was an accident. Spent 20 minutes picking up soggy cereal boxes and coffee filters while the smell of diesel exhaust hung in the morning air. Emma and Tyler watched from the front window, embarrassed their dad was crawling around the driveway in his pajamas. That first week, it happened 3 more times. Same routine 6:15 sharp, that rumble of her oversized engine, the sickening crunch of plastic meeting steel, then silence as she drove away. By Friday, I was getting suspicious. By the following Tuesday, I knew it was intentional. Mrs. Olivia, my elderly neighbor across the street, confirmed what I suspected. "She takes the long way around on purpose," she told me in her careful English. "Plenty of room on other side, but she drives close to your can every time." I tried reasoning with Brenda first. Caught her on the sidewalk during one of her afternoon patrols. "Hey, about the trash can situation." But she cut me off with this saccharine smile. "Marcus, I understand you're new to community living. These streets were designed for normal-sized vehicles, not oversized containers blocking traffic flow. Perhaps you should consider placement timing adjustments." Placement timing adjustments. Like there's some magical hour when the garbage truck doesn't need the can at the curb. That night, I started researching. Property rights, HOA bylaws, municipal ordinances. Turns out trash cans placed on public right-of-way still constitute personal property. More importantly, our HOA has no specific rules about placement timing or materials, just that they can't be visible from the street, except on collection day. By month's end, I'd replaced 4 trash cans at $92 total. The kids were getting stressed about the daily drama, and my custody evaluator was taking notes about neighborhood stability issues. Something had to change. That's when the smirk started. Brenda began making direct eye contact during her morning demolition runs, this little satisfied smile that said she knew exactly what she was doing. Game on. 2 weeks into October, Brenda escalated from property destruction to psychological warfare. I came home from a job site to find a certified letter waiting, the kind that makes your stomach drop before you even open the envelope. The thick paper felt expensive between my fingers, and the smell of fresh printer ink told me this wasn't some form letter she'd been sitting on. Improper trash receptacle placement creating traffic hazard, it read in official legalese that would make a paralegal proud. Section 4.7.3, no obstruction of vehicular traffic patterns. The deadline, 72 hours to remedy violation or face $50 in daily fines. She'd obviously rushed this thing through the system while the board was still reeling from my documentation at the last meeting. Here's where my years of troubleshooting electrical codes paid off. When something doesn't add up, you dig deeper. That evening, I dove into municipal law like I was hunting down a short circuit. After 3 hours of cross-referencing city ordinances with county regulations, I hit the jackpot. The city code explicitly requires trash placement within 3 feet of the curb on collection day. More importantly, HOA jurisdiction ends at the property line. They literally can't regulate public right-of-way. I remembered reading about a similar case online where a homeowner in California beat their HOA using this exact argument. I spent the weekend building my defense like I was preparing for the electrical contractor's exam all over again. Ring doorbell camera positioned perfectly to capture the morning routine. $47 for peace of mind. Professional survey confirming my placement complied with all city requirements. Even convinced Mrs. Olivia to provide a written statement, though her hands shook slightly as she signed it. "I don't want trouble," she whispered, "but this isn't right." Meanwhile, Brenda was busy playing social media prosecutor. She flooded the Nextdoor app with posts about reckless homeowners endangering children and dangerous corner obstacles forcing responsible drivers into oncoming traffic. The comments section became a battlefield between her 3 loyal supporters and everyone else who thought she'd completely lost touch with reality. Then came the twist that showed just how desperate she was getting. A buddy at City Hall, Dave works in the permit office, we've done electrical work together, called me Tuesday morning with interesting news. The city had received 4 separate complaints about my dangerous corner, each claiming different witness perspectives but obviously written by the same person. The timestamp showed them all submitted within 15 minutes at 2:47 a.m. Professional detective work this was not. "Marcus," Dave chuckled over the phone, "either your neighborhood has an epidemic of insomniacs with identical writing styles, or somebody's working overtime to build a case against you." By Thursday's board meeting, I'd compiled a folder thick enough to choke a horse. The community center smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and decades of boring municipal meetings. 12 homeowners showed up, a record crowd that had President Thornfield nervously adjusting his tie every 30 seconds. Brenda sat at the board table wearing a navy blazer that screamed, "I mean business," but I noticed the slight tremor in her hands when she reached for her water glass. She knew what was coming. When they called for old business, I stood up with my documentation. "I'd like to address the violation notice regarding trash can placement." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as the room went dead silent. I read the city ordinance aloud, word for word, displayed my survey results showing perfect compliance. The coup de grace was casually mentioning my consultation with Amanda Sterling, a property rights attorney who'd handled dozens of HOA cases. She found the selective enforcement patterns particularly interesting, I added, watching Brenda's face go pale. President Thornfield cleared his throat 3 times before speaking. "Well, this requires further review. We'll table this matter pending additional consideration." Translation: they had nothing and everyone knew it. But Brenda wasn't done. As we filed out, she cornered me in the parking lot under the buzzing security lights. Here's where she really showed her true colors. "You think you're so smart," she hissed, loud enough for the dozen homeowners still chatting nearby to hear every word. "People like you come into decent neighborhoods and think rules don't apply. Well, I've got news for you. This is just the beginning." Mrs. Rodriguez from Maple Street actually gasped, Jim Torres, our maintenance guy, suddenly found his keys fascinating. The racial undertones hung in the humid October air like smoke from a house fire, obvious to everyone present. My phone, positioned casually in my shirt pocket, captured every venomous syllable. That night, Emma asked why the mean lady hated us so much. Tyler wanted to know if we'd have to move again. I tucked them into bed, promising everything would work out, but privately, I was calculating the cost of this war. 3 replacement trash cans, 14 hours of documentation, attorney consultation fees mounting. But something had shifted in the community. Other homeowners were whispering about board overreach and asking uncomfortable questions about selective enforcement. Brenda's parking lot meltdown had revealed what many suspected: this wasn't about traffic safety or community standards. It was about power, control, and putting people she didn't like in their place. The next morning brought a telling change. Instead of her usual aggressive ramming approach, Brenda drove past my trash can at crawling speed, studying it like a general planning her next assault. The pattern was evolving, which meant bigger trouble was coming. November hit Pinewood Gardens like a cold slap in the face, and Brenda hit back even harder. While I was congratulating myself on winning round 1, she was busy weaponizing every obscure HOA bylaw she could find. The woman had apparently spent weeks combing through our community guidelines like a prosecutor building a RICO case. The assault came in waves. First, a violation notice about my grass height, apparently 2.75 inches, exceeded the 2.5-inch maximum by a criminal quarter-inch. Then my mailbox color, which had faded from heritage blue to what she classified as unauthorized weathered navy. Finally, 3 tiny tears in my window screens that you'd need a magnifying glass to spot. Each violation carried a $50 fine with 10-day payment deadlines. The kicker? I spent an entire Saturday afternoon walking the neighborhood with a measuring tape and camera, documenting identical violations on 14 other properties. Gerald Thornfield's grass was pushing 3 inches. Mrs. Patterson's mailbox had faded to roughly the same shade as mine. Half the houses on Maple Street had screen damage from the summer hailstorm. But somehow, only my violations merited official attention. While Brenda was playing bylaw prosecutor, I was having coffee with Dale Kowalski at Home Depot's contractor desk. Dale's been pouring concrete for 23 years, and when I mentioned my trash can troubles, his weathered face broke into a knowing grin. "You know," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee with a paint stir stick, "there's nothing in city code about what materials you can use for trash containers. Plastic, metal, concrete, as long as it holds garbage and fits the size requirements, you're golden." That conversation planted a seed that would grow into Brenda's worst nightmare. 60 pounds of concrete mix, steel rebar for reinforcement, and a clever modification to a standard plastic shell. Total cost $47 versus the $350 I was facing in mounting fines and replacement cans. But first, I had to deal with her harassment campaign. I spent Tuesday evening creating a comprehensive photo documentation of every comparable violation in our neighborhood. Wednesday morning, I filed a formal complaint with the HOA board about selective and discriminatory enforcement patterns. Here's something I learned from handling electrical permits for 2 decades. Bureaucrats hate when you use their own systems against them. My complaint forced the board to either enforce rules equally across all properties or admit they were targeting me specifically. Neither option worked in Brenda's favor. The real twist came when I started analyzing the demographics of her violation targets. Over the past year, Brenda had issued 67 violation notices. 49 went to single parents, elderly residents, or minorities. Only 18 targeted married couples or longtime homeowners. The pattern was so obvious it practically screamed lawsuit. I remember reading about Fair Housing Act violations and property management discrimination in HOA enforcement can trigger federal investigations. The thought of Brenda explaining her citation patterns to a civil rights attorney made me smile for the first time in weeks. Friday afternoon, I started my weekend concrete project. Emma and Tyler thought it was hilarious, helping me mix cement in the garage while classic rock played on my paint-splattered radio. The smell of setting concrete brought back memories of helping my dad pour our basement floor 30 years ago. That distinctive alkaline scent that meant something permanent was being built. The engineering was simple but effective. Hollow bottom section for weight distribution, drainage holes maintained for functionality, exterior appearance identical to every other trash can on the block. From the outside, it looked completely normal. Inside, 60 pounds of steel-reinforced concrete waited to teach Brenda a physics lesson about immovable objects. Monday morning, I positioned my newly reinforced trash can in exactly the same spot as always. 6:15 came right on schedule, along with the rumble of Brenda's oversized engine. But this time, something was different. Her approach was slower, more cautious. She'd obviously noticed the can looked identical but somehow felt suspicious. The first collision came at about 15 miles per hour, her usual ramming speed. The sound was completely different. Instead of that sick crunch of breaking plastic, there was a solid thunk followed by the screech of metal on concrete. Her Escalade's running board bent like aluminum foil, while my trash can sat there looking mildly offended. I watched through my kitchen window, coffee mug warm against my palms, as Brenda sat in her SUV for a full 30 seconds, clearly confused by what had just happened. She revved the engine and tried again from a different angle. Same result, more damage to her vehicle, zero damage to my concrete fortress. The beauty of the whole setup was its complete legality. No city ordinances violated, no HOA rules broken, just a homeowner upgrading his trash receptacle with better materials. If she wanted to keep ramming it, that was her choice and her insurance claim to file. Over the next week, Brenda made increasingly desperate attempts to damage my concrete creation. Each collision left new scratches and dents on her pearl-white Escalade while my can remained smugly intact. The irony was delicious. Her own aggressive behavior was destroying the very vehicle she used as a weapon. By Friday, her SUV showed nearly $800 in accumulated damage. Mine showed a few scuff marks that made it look more authentic. The neighborhood was starting to talk, and for once, Brenda wasn't controlling the narrative. By mid-November, Brenda had transformed from neighborhood busybody into full-blown private investigator. The woman was so obsessed with my trash can that she'd probably dreamed about it in flowcharts and conspiracy theories. I'd catch glimpses of her pearl-white Escalade now sporting a growing collection of dents and scratches, cruising past my house at odd hours like some suburban stalker. The first sign of her detective work came on a Tuesday morning when Mrs. Olivia called, her voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus, that woman was in your driveway last night with a flashlight and some kind of scale. I watched from my bedroom window. She was trying to weigh your trash can." I had to laugh at the mental image. Brenda, probably in her navy blazer and sensible shoes, sneaking around my property at midnight with a bathroom scale, trying to solve the mystery of the indestructible trash receptacle. The woman needed a hobby that didn't involve trespassing. Her investigation intensified throughout the week. Jim Torres, our maintenance guy, mentioned she'd cornered him at the hardware store, interrogating him about concrete purchases and asking which residents had bought unusual materials recently. She'd even started stalking my social media accounts, looking for construction hints in my Facebook posts about weekend projects. The twist that really showed her desperation came when she tried to weaponize city bureaucracy again. Thursday afternoon, a building inspector knocked on my door, a tired-looking guy named Pete who clearly had better things to do than investigate trash cans. "Ma'am filed a complaint about potential building code violations," he explained, checking boxes on his clipboard with the enthusiasm of someone filling out tax forms. "Something about unauthorized concrete structures on residential property." I walked Pete around to the trash can where he spent about 30 seconds examining it before shaking his head. "It's a garbage container, not a foundation. No permits required, no violations present. Honestly, I've seen people build entire sheds without this much scrutiny." But Brenda wasn't finished with her official harassment campaign. The following week brought a notice from the HOA demanding immediate access for compliance verification of my property. The letter, obviously drafted by Brenda and rubber-stamped by President Thornfield, claimed they needed to inspect my exterior modifications for safety violations. This is where my research into property rights came in handy. I'd spent hours reading about Fourth Amendment protections and HOA authority limitations after that first violation notice. The landmark case was Narstedt versus Lakeside Village, where courts ruled that HOAs can't conduct fishing expeditions on private property without specific cause or emergency circumstances. My response was polite but firm. No private property access without a court order or genuine emergency. If they wanted to inspect my legally compliant trash receptacle, they could examine it from the public sidewalk like everyone else. The smell of Brenda's frustration was almost as satisfying as fresh concrete. Meanwhile, her vehicle was becoming a rolling advertisement for the durability of steel-reinforced concrete. Each morning brought new collision attempts, and each attempt left fresh damage on her Escalade. The running board now hung at an angle like a broken wing. Her front bumper sported spiderweb cracks, and one headlight housing had developed a concerning rattle. The neighborhood was starting to notice. During my Saturday morning coffee run, I overheard 3 different conversations about that crazy woman who keeps hitting the same trash can. Mrs. Rodriguez had started timing Brenda's morning routine, while the teenage kids on Elm Street had apparently started a betting pool on daily collision outcomes. Emma found the whole situation simultaneously hilarious and embarrassing. "Dad, kids at school are asking if we're the family with the concrete can lady," she told me over dinner. I don't know whether to hide or take credit for having the coolest revenge story in the district. Tyler, ever practical, wanted to know if we could sell tickets to the morning entertainment. "Seriously, Dad, we could charge $5 and fund my college education just from neighbors wanting front row seats to the demolition derby." The real breakthrough came when Patricia Lopez, the only reasonable board member, pulled me aside after a neighborhood gathering. In hushed tones near the community center's coffee station, she shared intelligence that changed everything. "Marcus, you need to know Brenda's been having private meetings with Gerald about enhanced enforcement authority. She wants the board to authorize property inspections, material restrictions, even contractor background checks for homeowner projects." But Patricia's biggest revelation was financial. She's also been pushing hard for approval of maintenance contracts with some company I've never heard of. Every time we discuss the budget, she has these detailed proposals ready, like she's been planning for months. That night, I started a different kind of investigation. If Brenda was this obsessed with controlling neighborhood projects and pushing specific contractors, maybe her motivation wasn't just power, maybe it was profit. Public records are amazing things when you know where to look, and municipal contract databases tell interesting stories about who gets paid for what. By Sunday evening, I'd uncovered something that made her trash can obsession look like small potatoes. Brenda Whitmore wasn't just a control freak with too much time on her hands. She was running a scam, and my concrete fortress had accidentally threatened her entire operation. Sunday night research sessions used to be for helping Emma with her history papers, or Tyler with algebra homework. This particular evening, I was deep in the city's public contract database, following a hunch that Patricia Lopez's warning had planted in my brain like a splinter. I'd started simple, just searching for any recent business registrations involving the name Whitmore. What I found made me set down my coffee and lean closer to the computer screen. Whitmore Construction LLC, formed 6 months ago, listed Brenda Whitmore as 40% owner and her husband Richard as president. The timeline made my skin crawl. Company formation in May, first HOA maintenance contract bid in July, harassment campaign against me beginning in early September. The dots connected themselves with surgical precision. I spent the next 2 hours diving deeper into public records, and what I discovered would have made a forensic accountant weep with joy. Over the past 4 months, Whitmore Construction had been awarded 7 different maintenance contracts by our HOA board. Landscape edging, sidewalk repairs, community center touch-ups, playground maintenance, $23,400 in total work. The bidding patterns told the real story. On every single contract, Whitmore Construction had underbid the competition by exactly $50 to $100. Not enough to seem suspicious, but just enough to guarantee selection. It was like watching someone play poker with marked cards, technically legal moves, but obviously rigged. Here's what really made my electrician's brain click into overdrive. Brenda had voted to approve every single one of those contracts. 7 votes, 7 approvals, 7 payouts to her family business. The conflict of interest was so blatant, it practically had neon signs around it. I remembered reading about fiduciary duty violations during my earlier legal research. Board members are required to disclose any financial interests in vendor contracts. Failure to do so violates state nonprofit corporation law and opens the door to both civil lawsuits and criminal fraud charges. The evidence was sitting right there in digital black and white. Business registration documents, HOA meeting minutes, contract award records, bank deposit slips from the association's monthly statements. Brenda had been using her board position to funnel community dues directly into her family's bank account. But the timeline revealed something even more damning. My first polite conversation with Brenda about the trash can incidents? September 15th. First questioning of maintenance budget at the monthly board meeting? September 3rd. She'd started her harassment campaign exactly 12 days after I'd innocently asked why we were spending so much on basic repairs. My concrete trash can hadn't just been blocking her morning power walk, it had been protecting evidence of systematic theft from 127 homeowners. The scope of potential violations made my head spin. Civil liability for financial mismanagement, criminal exposure for fraud, automatic removal from the board upon proven conflict of interest. This wasn't just about property rights anymore. It was about corruption, embezzlement, and a woman desperate enough to destroy evidence that she'd waged psychological warfare against anyone who threatened her scheme. I printed everything, made digital copies on 3 separate cloud services, and immediately emailed the complete file to attorney Amanda Sterling with a note. Urgent review requested, criminal implications possible. The power dynamic had just shifted completely. Brenda thought she was fighting some divorced electrician over a trash can placement. What she was actually facing was exposure of a fraud scheme that could land her in federal prison and bankrupt her family. Tuesday morning, I watched from my kitchen window as she made her usual collision attempt with my concrete fortress. Her Escalade now showed over $1,200 in accumulated damage, while my trash can sat there like an immovable monument to her stupidity. But for the first time since this whole mess started, I wasn't thinking about trash cans or HOA bylaws or morning demolition derbies. I was thinking about justice, community protection, and the sweet satisfaction of watching a bully discover that their victims sometimes bite back harder than expected. The war was about to begin in earnest. Tuesday evening, my garage transformed from a weekend workshop into a war room that would have made Pentagon strategists proud. I'd cleared out the workbenches, set up folding tables, and arranged 5 mismatched chairs in a circle around the evidence board I'd constructed, using construction paper and red string like something from a crime thriller. The core team assembled by 7 p.m. sharp. Mrs. Olivia arrived first, clutching a thermos of jasmine tea and looking nervously determined. Jim Torres showed up still wearing his maintenance uniform, tool belt jangling with each step. Patricia Lopez brought a stack of HOA financial documents she'd borrowed from the board files. Dale Kowalski rolled in last, carrying a box of donuts and grinning like we were planning a surprise party instead of exposing municipal corruption. "All right," I said, taping the final timeline chart to the garage wall. "Here's what we're dealing with." The evidence layout looked like something from a federal investigation. $23,000 in questionable contracts, 7 separate conflict of interest violations, 47 documented harassment incidents, and 1 increasingly damaged Escalade serving as rolling proof of Brenda's deteriorating mental state. Patricia whistled low when she saw the financial analysis. I knew something felt wrong about those contracts, but I never imagined it was this systematic. Every time I questioned the expenses, Brenda had these detailed justifications ready, like she'd rehearsed them. Dale examined the vehicle damage photos with professional interest. "That bumper's going to cost at least $2,000 to fix properly. The alignment issues alone will eat through tires like crazy. Your concrete can's turning her SUV into a very expensive life lesson." We spent the next hour organizing our multi-pronged attack strategy. Jim would monitor Brenda's activities and document any retaliation attempts. Mrs. Olivia would coordinate the door-to-door campaign to gather neighbor support. Patricia would work the inside game, building board member consensus for a financial audit. Dale would serve as our technical consultant on any construction-related evidence. The legal strategy required delicate coordination. Amanda Sterling had confirmed we had solid cases for harassment, financial fraud, and board misconduct, but timing would be crucial. File too early and Brenda might destroy evidence. Wait too long, and she could complete whatever cover-up she was surely planning. I'd learned something important from 22 years of electrical troubleshooting. Complex problems require layered solutions. Fighting HOA overreach with just property rights arguments is like trying to fix a short circuit by replacing one fuse. You need to address the whole system. Our approach would hit from 4 directions simultaneously: legal pressure through criminal complaints and civil lawsuits, social pressure through community organizing and petition drives, political pressure through media attention and municipal oversight, financial pressure through audit demands and contract cancellations. The community organizing phase started Wednesday morning. Armed with professional presentation materials and irrefutable documentation, I began visiting every house in Pinewood Gardens. The response was overwhelming: 89 signatures supporting property rights, 34 demanding immediate financial audits, and 12 volunteering for testimony at the upcoming board meeting. Mrs. Rodriguez from Maple Street nearly slammed her door before I could explain the situation. 5 minutes later, she was furiously signing the petition and muttering Spanish phrases that probably weren't complimentary to Brenda's character. "That woman tried to fine me for having my garbage can out 15 minutes early," she fumed. 15 minutes, like the garbage police were timing us with stopwatches. The opposition mapping revealed interesting patterns. Brenda's hardcore supporters were exclusively long-term homeowners who'd benefited from selective rule enforcement. The fence-sitters were mostly newer residents afraid of property value impacts or board retaliation. Everyone else was ready to see some accountability. Media preparation took 3 days of careful planning. Channel 7's investigative unit specialized in municipal corruption stories, and reporter Sarah Kim had covered similar HOA scandals across the metro area. The press kit included professional timeline graphics, expert legal opinions, and 12 minutes of edited video showing Brenda's escalating collision attempts. The social media campaign exploded faster than I'd anticipated. The Pinewood Gardens Transparency Facebook group gained 67 members in 4 days, with neighbors sharing their own stories of selective enforcement, harassment, and financial irregularities. Someone posted a time-lapse video of Brenda's morning routine set to circus music that went viral throughout the suburban community network. Meanwhile, my concrete trash can continued serving as both evidence and entertainment. Thursday morning brought collision attempt number 53, resulting in a headlight housing that now dangled like a broken tooth. The neighborhood kids had started gathering at bus stops early just to witness the daily demolition derby. Emma reported that her friends at school were calling our house the place with the indestructible trash can. Tyler had started charging classmates 50 cents each to see the video compilation on his phone. The story was spreading beyond our community faster than gossip at a church potluck. By Sunday evening, everything was coordinated. Board meeting scheduled for Tuesday night, media interviews arranged for Wednesday morning, criminal complaints prepared for Thursday filing. 118 residents committed to attending the confrontation, with 17 planning to speak during public comment. The coalition was built, the evidence was bulletproof, and Brenda had no idea what was coming. Time to bring down the hammer. The weekend before our planned board meeting ambush, Brenda went completely off the rails. Desperation has a particular smell like burnt coffee and panic sweat, and it was practically radiating from her every move. She'd obviously sensed the walls closing in because her harassment campaign escalated from annoying to potentially criminal faster than her Escalade could hit my concrete fortress. Saturday night, I was jolted awake by the hiss of spray paint. Through my bedroom window, I could see a dark figure crouched beside my trash can, illuminated by the motion sensor lights. By the time I'd grabbed my phone and stumbled outside, they were gone, leaving behind amateur graffiti that spelled "MOVE" in bright orange letters across the concrete surface. The beautiful thing about spray paint on concrete, it pressure washes off in about 30 seconds. The beautiful thing about security cameras, they record everything in high definition, including license plate numbers of pearl white Escalades parked 3 houses down during the incident. Monday brought a new level of harassment. An anonymous complaint to the gas company claimed I'd been conducting suspicious excavation activities that might damage underground lines. The utility inspector who showed up was apologetic but thorough, spending 2 hours with detection equipment before confirming what I already knew. No digging, no violations, no problems. Honestly, he told me, loading his gear back into the truck, whoever called this in either has serious vision problems or serious psychological problems. There's no excavation anywhere on your property. The twist that revealed Brenda's true desperation came Tuesday morning. Jim Torres found me at the hardware store, his weathered face grim with concern. "Marcus, she hired a private security company to watch your house. Riverside Security, I know the owner's cousin. $200 a day for surveillance on a trash can dispute. The woman's lost her damn mind." But Brenda's surveillance worked both ways. My upgraded security system had captured her drive-by inspections, her midnight photography sessions, and her increasingly erratic behavior patterns. The woman was unraveling faster than a cheap extension cord, and every moment was being documented for posterity. Wednesday brought the discovery that made me genuinely angry. Emma came home from school upset, having overheard Brenda talking to another parent about dangerous neighborhood influences and inappropriate role models for community children. The racial undertones weren't subtle. and the implications for my custody situation were crystal clear. That evening, I hired Beth Morrison, a retired police detective who specialized in harassment investigations. For $200 a day, I could have professional documentation of Brenda's stalking behavior, plus someone with law enforcement experience to testify about escalation patterns and threat assessment. The sabotage attempts intensified throughout the week. Someone poured what looked like battery acid on my concrete trash can. It left a small stain, but no structural damage. Anonymous complaints flooded the city about everything from my lawn height to my electrical work permits. Fake negative reviews appeared on my business Google listing faster than I could flag them for removal. But the most shocking discovery came Friday evening. Tyler was working on his bike in the driveway when he found something unusual attached to my work truck's undercarriage, a small black device with blinking lights and magnetic mounting. "Dad," he called out, his voice tight with concern, "what's this thing stuck under your truck?" GPS tracker, professional grade, probably cost $300, definitely illegal when placed without consent. I photographed it from every angle before carefully removing it and driving straight to the police station. Officer Derek Martinez took the report with the weary expression of someone who'd seen this type of escalation before. "Mr. Holloway, this moves beyond neighborhood disputes into criminal territory. Unauthorized surveillance, stalking, harassment. We're building a case file that could result in serious charges." The insurance fraud angle developed simultaneously. Brenda had filed a $3,200 claim for road hazard damage, claiming her collision occurred on a city street rather than my property. The problem was my Ring camera footage, which clearly showed deliberate targeting of my trash can from multiple angles over several weeks. When State Farm's investigator called for an interview, I was ready with a complete evidence package. 53 documented collision attempts, witness statements, video compilation, and professional assessment of the damage patterns. The investigator's reaction was immediate and decisive. "Ma'am, this isn't road hazard damage. This is intentional property destruction with an expensive vehicle. We're denying the claim and referring the case to our fraud unit for criminal investigation." The community pressure was building like steam in a pressure cooker. Our Facebook group had grown to 94 members sharing increasingly outrageous stories of Brenda's behavior. Mrs. Patterson reported harassment about her rose bushes. The Johnsons on Oak Street had received violation notices for children's sidewalk chalk art. Even Gerald Thornfield was privately distancing himself from her actions. Saturday morning brought collision attempt 57, this time resulting in a completely detached bumper that Brenda had to retrieve from my driveway. The sight of her crawling around in her business attire, gathering plastic fragments while neighbors watched from windows, would have been hilarious if it wasn't so pathetic. By Sunday evening, the evidence compilation was complete. Criminal behavior documented, witness statements notarized, financial fraud exposed, community coalition organized. Tuesday's board meeting would be less of a confrontation and more of a public execution. Brenda just didn't know it yet. Monday morning, 12 hours before our planned board meeting showdown, Brenda made her most desperate move yet. Gerald Thornfield called an emergency closed-door session to address what he termed escalating liability concerns and community safety issues. The man's voice on my voicemail sounded like he'd been gargling gravel and anxiety for breakfast. The emergency meeting was classic damage control. 3 board members huddled in the community center office while Prescott and Associates attorney Harold Masterson billed $400 an hour to figure out how deep in legal quicksand they'd stepped. Through the blinds, I could see animated gestures and what looked like Brenda waving documents like surrender flags. Patricia Lopez texted me updates from inside the meeting. "Brenda's claiming you've made terrorist threats, wants emergency powers to seize dangerous modifications. Harold looks like he'd rather be defending serial killers." The cover-up attempt was as clumsy as Brenda's morning collision techniques. Someone had backdated conflict of interest disclosure forms for Whitmore Construction, but the digital timestamps on the email server told a different story. You can't retroactively create ethics compliance, especially when the original contract votes are recorded in public meeting minutes. Meanwhile, the insurance investigation was picking up steam faster than Brenda's Escalade hitting my concrete fortress. State investigator Maria Santos had subpoenaed HOA financial records, board meeting minutes, and all communication between Brenda and the association's insurance carrier. The paper trail was about as subtle as a train wreck in slow motion. Tuesday afternoon brought the most shocking revelation yet. Richard Whitmore, Brenda's husband, called me directly, something that took more courage than I'd expected from a man who'd been watching his wife destroy their life savings one collision at a time. "Marcus," his voice was barely above a whisper, "this has to stop. She's spent $8,000 on lawyers, surveillance, and vehicle repairs. Our insurance got canceled. The business is facing contract cancellations. I need to know, what would it take to make this go away?" I almost felt sorry for the guy. Almost. "Richard, your wife stalked my family, vandalized my property, committed insurance fraud, and embezzled from 127 homeowners. This isn't going away with an apology and a check." The twist that revealed just how desperate they'd become came 2 hours before the board meeting. Brenda filed an emergency restraining order petition based on completely fabricated evidence, fake threatening voicemails, doctored photos of aggressive confrontations, and witness statements from people who didn't exist. The petition was so poorly constructed that Judge Patricia Williams dismissed it without even scheduling a hearing. "Ms. Whitmore, these recordings are clearly edited, these photos are obviously staged, and these witnesses appear to be fictional. Filing false evidence is contempt of court. Consider this your only warning." But Brenda's legal troubles were multiplying faster than her collision attempts. The state insurance commissioner had assigned investigator Maria Santos to build a criminal fraud case. The district attorney's office was reviewing harassment and stalking charges. The IRS had received copies of all financial documentation showing unreported income from the construction contracts. As 6 p.m. approached, the community center parking lot filled up like Black Friday at Best Buy. Cars lined both sides of Maple Street, with neighbors walking from 3 blocks away carrying lawn chairs and folding signs. Channel 7's news van pulled up precisely at 5:30, followed by Channel 12 and the Metro Weekly reporter who'd been following our story. Inside the meeting room, you could cut the tension with a concrete saw. 118 residents packed into a space designed for 40, with overflow crowds standing along the walls and spilling into the hallway. The smell of nervous perspiration mixed with industrial coffee created an atmosphere thick enough to chew. Brenda arrived fashionably late, flanked by Harold Masterson and looking like she'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Her usual navy blazer had been replaced with funeral black, and the tremor in her hands was visible from across the room. Gerald Thornfield kept adjusting his tie like a noose was tightening around his neck. The attempted intimidation backfired spectacularly. Masterson's opening statement about frivolous complaints and disruptive residents was interrupted by Mrs. Olivia standing up with her stack of witness statements. "Excuse me," she said in her careful English, "but which one of us has been committing insurance fraud and embezzling money?" The room erupted in applause and nervous laughter. 17 neighbors had prepared to speak during public comment, each armed with documentation of Brenda's harassment, financial irregularities, or selective enforcement patterns. The evidence compilation filled 3 bankers' boxes and included everything from collision videos to contract analysis to criminal complaint receipts. But the real bombshell was yet to come. At exactly 6:45, as Brenda was attempting to deflect questions about the Whitmore construction contracts, Officer Derek Martinez walked through the community center doors carrying an official-looking folder. "Sorry to interrupt," he announced to the suddenly silent room, "but I have a warrant to serve regarding insurance fraud and stalking charges." The color drained from Brenda's face faster than antifreeze from her damaged Escalade. Harold Masterson immediately began whispering urgent legal advice while Gerald Thornfield looked like he was having chest pains. Game over. Check and mate. Time for the public execution. The community center had never seen anything like it. 127 residents, literally every homeowner in Pinewood Gardens packed into a room designed for maybe 40 people, with another 15 media representatives setting up cameras like this was a presidential debate. The air conditioning couldn't keep up with the body heat, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps sensing blood in the water. I'd positioned myself strategically in the 3rd row, flanked by Mrs. Olivia and Jim Torres, with my concrete trash can wheeled in as Exhibit A and sitting proudly beside the podium. The symbolism wasn't subtle. That 60-pound monument to her stupidity had become the star witness in what was about to unfold. Brenda sat at the board table looking like she'd rather be getting a root canal without anesthesia. Her usual navy blazer had been replaced with funeral black, and every few seconds she'd glance toward the exit like a trapped animal calculating escape routes. Harold Masterson whispered urgent legal advice in her ear while Gerald Thornfield sweated through his shirt like a man facing his own execution. Officer Martinez's entrance with that warrant folder had changed everything. The room fell silent except for the mechanical whir of news cameras and the nervous tapping of Brenda's pen against the table, a rapid-fire staccato that sounded like Morse code for "help me." Gerald called for order with a voice that cracked like a teenager's. "We'll now hear public comments regarding recent community concerns." I stood up first, carrying my presentation boards like a prosecutor approaching the jury. The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the exit sign transformer. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice carrying easily through the packed space. "This isn't about trash cans. This isn't about HOA bylaws or property rights or community standards. This is about accountability, transparency, and stopping corruption before it destroys our neighborhood." I walked them through the timeline methodically. 57 documented collision attempts, each one recorded in high definition. The GPS tracker illegally placed on my vehicle. The spray paint vandalism captured on security cameras. The fake insurance claims that constituted felony fraud. But the real showstopper was the financial presentation. Using a borrowed projector, I displayed the contract analysis that showed $23,400 funneled from community dues directly into Brenda's family business account. "Every month, you've been paying higher fees to fund Mrs. Whitmore's personal construction company," I announced, watching jaws drop throughout the audience. 7 contracts, 7 undisclosed conflicts of interest, 7 violations of state nonprofit law. The video compilation played next 12 minutes of Brenda's greatest hits, set to a soundtrack of crunching plastic and scraping metal. The gasps and nervous laughter from the crowd provided perfect accompaniment to the footage of her increasingly desperate collision attempts. Then came the mic drop moment I'd been rehearsing for weeks. "Mrs. Whitmore," I said, turning to face her directly while the cameras rolled, "you've spent $3,400 on lawyers, destroyed your $60,000 vehicle, committed insurance fraud, and stalked my family over a $23 trash can. But the real crime is the $47,000 you've stolen from this community through your family's construction company." The room erupted. Neighbors who'd been grumbling about rising HOA fees suddenly understood where their money had been going. Mrs. Rodriguez stood up shouting in rapid Spanish that probably wasn't complimentary. The teenagers from Elm Street actually started clapping like they were at a concert. Brenda's response was everything I'd hoped for and more. She shot up from her chair like a jack-in-the-box, her carefully constructed composure finally cracking under the pressure. "This is harassment," she screamed, her voice reaching frequencies that probably bothered dogs 3 blocks away. "These people don't understand property values or community standards. They come into decent neighborhoods and think rules don't apply to them." The racial undertones hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Channel 7's camera captured every word, every gesture, every moment of her complete psychological breakdown. Mrs. Olivia actually gasped audibly when Brenda pointed directly at her and shouted something about certain elements ruining the community. Harold Masterson tried desperately to control his client, but Brenda was beyond legal advice. She grabbed my evidence boards, attempting to tear them apart before Jim Torres and 2 other neighbors gently restrained her. The woman was having a complete meltdown on live television while Officer Martinez calmly took notes for his incident report. "I built this community," she shrieked, mascara running down her cheeks like black tears. "I protected property values. I kept standards high." "And this is how you treat someone who sacrificed everything for neighborhood integrity," Gerald Thornfield called for recess, but nobody was leaving. This was better than reality TV, more dramatic than a soap opera, and more satisfying than watching your worst enemy step on a rake. Patricia Lopez stood up amid the chaos and made the motion that everyone was waiting for. I moved for the immediate suspension of Brenda Whitmore from the board, pending criminal investigation and financial audit. The vote was unanimous, 4-0, with Brenda abstaining while handcuffed to Officer Martinez's chair. Justice served concrete cold with a side of public humiliation. The aftermath unfolded like dominoes falling in perfect sequence. Within 48 hours of the board meeting meltdown, Brenda's world collapsed faster than her Escalade suspension system under repeated concrete impacts. Tuesday morning brought her formal resignation, letter 2 lines of bitter text claiming hostile work environment and personal attacks. By Thursday, the district attorney had filed insurance fraud charges, carrying up to 6 months jail time and $5,000 in fines. Her insurance license was revoked Friday afternoon, followed by the suspension of Whitmore Construction's contractor certification. The financial reckoning was swift and merciless. Our emergency HOA audit, conducted by Patterson and Associates CPAs, recovered $47,000 in overcharges and questionable contracts. Every homeowner received a $370 refund check by Christmas, the sweetest holiday gift Pinewood Gardens had ever seen. Richard Whitmore called me one final time, his voice hollow with defeat. "The civil settlement check is in the mail," he said quietly. $12,500, as agreed. "Brenda wanted me to tell you she's moving to Florida to live with her sister." I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered the GPS tracker, the fake insurance claims, and the months of harassment my family had endured. Some lessons come expensive, and this one cost them everything. The governance transformation was remarkable. Patricia Lopez won the special election for board president by unanimous vote, running on a platform of transparency and community engagement. The new board implemented conflict of interest disclosure requirements, monthly financial reports, and public contractor bidding processes that would make municipal governments jealous. Our first community project under the reformed leadership was the playground renovation, funded entirely by recovered embezzlement money. Watching Emma and Tyler help design the new equipment alongside neighbors who'd once whispered about our disruptive family felt like emotional vindication wrapped in practical progress. The legal precedent spread beyond our neighborhood. Holloway versus Pinewood Gardens. HOA was cited in 12 subsequent property rights cases across Ohio. The state legislature passed the HOA Accountability Act, requiring financial disclosure and audit procedures that insurance investigators called the gold standard for municipal oversight. Channel 7's investigative series won a regional Emmy for exposing suburban corruption, and reporter Sarah Kim still calls me occasionally for expert commentary on HOA reform legislation. The original collision videos have been viewed over 200,000 times on YouTube, inspiring similar resistance movements in communities from Toledo to Cincinnati. My concrete trash can became a neighborhood legend. We moved it to the community center lobby as a permanent display, complete with a bronze plaque reading "Property Rights Protected, 2023. New homeowners get the full story during orientation meetings, and visiting contractors often ask to see the famous indestructible can that brought down a corrupt board. But the real victory was community healing. The Concrete Can Days festival we established draws families from 3 surrounding developments every September, featuring bounce houses, barbecue competitions, and educational workshops on homeowner rights. Last year's attendance topped 800 people, turning our trauma into triumph and our resistance into celebration. The scholarship fund I established with the settlement money has helped 4 students attend college so far. The Marcus Holloway Property Rights Scholarship prioritizes applicants who demonstrate creative problem solving in the face of institutional opposition, essentially rewarding future troublemakers who refuse to accept injustice quietly. Emma and Tyler learned lessons about principled resistance that no civics class could teach. Emma's college application essay about fighting corruption with concrete evidence earned her admission to 3 journalism programs. Tyler started a YouTube channel called Suburban Justice that covers HOA disputes across the Midwest with the enthusiasm of a teenage investigative reporter. The personal healing surprised me most. My custody evaluation improved dramatically after the community rallied around our family. The judge noted that children benefit from seeing parents stand up for principles and protect family interests through legal channels rather than violence or surrender. My electrical contracting business expanded through referrals from neighbors who'd witnessed my documentation skills and strategic thinking. Apparently, methodical problem-solving translates well from HOA disputes to complex wiring projects, and my reputation for getting results the right way opened doors throughout the county. Sometimes David does beat Goliath, but only when David comes prepared with evidence, allies, and 60 pounds of steel-reinforced concrete. Drop a comment and share your HOA nightmare story. Let's build a database of corruption and help each other fight back. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories where the little guy wins through preparation, patience, and perfect timing. Justice tastes sweetest when served with community support and creative problem solving.
Thanks for hanging out with us on HOA Stories, where the HOA Karens meet their match. If this story had you cheering or cringing, go ahead and like the video, Drop a comment with your reaction and hit subscribe so you're ready for the next wild HOA tale.